Edward Scissorhands, 1990. This was my first viewing of it. Well over 2 decades ago, I bought a big black box set with the book Burton on Burton and Edward Scissorhands on VHS. The movie just never appealed to me, and I bought the box set for the book, which I read multiple times, and the box was relatively cheap. It was maybe about £10. I started Edward Scissorhands. I got 10-15 minutes in and gave up because I just had no interest in it. And subsequently, I have not watched the movie ever since because it just, something about it does not appeal to me. So this was my first viewing. I taped it off of TV in high definition, and it sat on my TiVo box for about a month before I finally deleted it because I thought I'm never going to watch this. But yesterday I watched Beetlejuice, and I was thinking that there's nothing really similar to Beetlejuice. It's such a peculiar, one-of-a-kind type of movie. I made a vague connection towards E.T. because it's, a peculiar special effects movie for kids with a bit of action, a bit of horror, a bit of drama. And the only other movie I could connect it to was Edward Scissorhands, which I assumed shares very similar DNA for obvious reasons. But I assumed it was tonally quite similar. So I found it in the deleted section of my TiVo and undeleted it and watched it the next day after Beetlejuice. If Beetlejuice is here, which I think it's an overrated movie but a good movie, Edward Scissorhands is about 3 notches down. I thought it was strangely bland. That is the word that comes to mind. Bland. It never really develops much of a worthwhile story. The production design might be quite nice and pretty and interesting, but it's not interesting enough in and of itself to be all that intriguing to support the rather lackadaisical, indifferent storytelling. The characters never develop in any way whatsoever. They're not. Beetlejuice had comical characters who were, because of the big performances and some of the things they were asked to do and say, it was just, it's a funny movie, it's a comedy, while Edward Scissorhands, although having some slight comic quality to it, doesn't really play things for laughs necessarily, and so it's a much more restrained, much more blander movie. It's not dramatic really, it's not comic really, it's not really much of anything, it's just a stylised fairy tale, which is fine, but I personally just didn't find it to be all that interesting. The magical realism and the questionable logic, which is fine, but again it just makes me shrug with indifference. This is okay, this is watchable, I don't mind it, but I'm not fascinated by it, I'm not particularly entertained in any notable way. This is perfectly watchable, but it's also rather underwhelming. It's not very effective, it's just a shrug, an indifferent, yes, well, this is okay, this plays alright, but it's not working half as well as it should. Somehow it just doesn't have any real punch to it, and I just didn't get much out of it. I don't think there was much actual substance to it. It is really a case of a lot of style, but no real substance underneath it all. I mean, I guess if this movie talks to you, it talks to you in a big way. But to me, it just doesn't talk to me. It sits there on the screen being competent and stylish, but not actually very engaging. It just doesn't pick up and become much of anything, and the plot fails to really develop in any interesting, worthwhile way. It falls between the stools too much, between not really having enough dramatic meat on the bones, not enough comedy, and just sort of ending up not being much of anything. So I did not expect much. It is a movie I have avoided for decades due to a lack of interest in it. It just did not appeal, and I cannot say that what wow, what a stupid thing that was. I have spent decades not watching this really good movie. I have to just say, yeah, I spent decades not watching this movie and it was fine. I was not missing out on anything important. Watchable, but bland. I would give Edward Scissorhands 5 out of 10. Burton on Burton, copyright 1995. This only goes up as far as Ed Wood.